Hello viewer, I'm teacher Sharon Ilenji and I'm glad to take you through History and Government Form 2. Our topic today is on trade, and in this lesson we are going to look at two areas, that is the definition of trade and methods of trade. How do we define the term trade? This is simply the buying and selling of goods for mutual benefit. It is the buying and selling of goods for mutual benefit. For example, I'm in need of a cow and there's someone who is selling the cow and he's in need of the cash. I will be the buyer and he will be the seller. So I will be able to get the cow from him and he will be able to get the cash from me. So through this buying and selling, we are able to meet each other's needs. That is why we are saying it's the buying and selling of goods for mutual benefit. We can also define it as the exchange of goods and services with an aim of making profit. We will now move to the methods of trade, and under these we have two, the barter trade and the currency trade. We will begin with the barter trade. Barter trade involves the exchange of goods and services for other goods and services. For example, exchanging fish and pots for milk and meat. So this is the oldest method of trade in the history of human civilization. And we can see that during the olden times, man could exchange goods from another man who had different goods from what he produced. And let me take this as an example. The Maasai, who were pastoralists, were able to exchange their animal product with the Agikuyu, who were farmers, and they were able to obtain maize, cassava, sorghum, and millet from the Agikuyu. So this was the exchange of goods for other goods. And this method of trade could take the form of silent trade or dumb trade. Why do we say this? Because remember, these are two different communities, each speaking different languages. So they were not in a position to understand each other. There was language barrier. So that is why it could take the form of dumb trade or silent trade. And now let's look at the advantage of using barter trade. And this includes, it is useful where money is non-existent. It is useful where money is non-existent. That is why it involves the buying and selling of goods, the exchange of goods for goods. You exchange goods for other goods, like the way the Maasai exchanged animal products with agricultural produce from their neighboring communities. What are some of the disadvantages of using this method of trade? And number one, we are going to look at lack of double coincidence of wants. And by this I mean, if I have a cow and I want to get a bag of maize, it is difficult to get a person who has a bag of maize and wants a cow. Instead, I'll get a person with a bag of maize and he wants a goat. So we are not able to meet the needs of one another because of the lack of double coincidence. Another disadvantage is that it was not easy to establish the actual value of the goods, because, for example, I cannot be able to know the actual value of a cow with what I'm exchanging with, for example, maize. But because I want maize anyway, I'll just have to exchange a sack of maize with the cow. So it was not easy to establish the actual value of the goods. Another disadvantage is some goods could not be divided into smaller quantities. And I'll use this form. For example, I have a cow and I want 3 sacks of beans. And if I get a person and he has 2 bags of beans, I'll have to take it because I need it. So it was not able to divide, I was not in a position to divide this cow, then I'll just have to take it the way it is. So some goods could not be divided into smaller quantities. Some commodities were bulky and perishable, and commodities that were bulky could not be easily transported in the market for trading, and those that were perishable, by the time they get to the market they have gone bad. So this is also another disadvantage of barter trade. And lastly, lack of a common language. It was difficult to communicate with a different person from a different tribal group or from a different community, and that is why we said it could take a form of dumb trade or silent trade, because the two parties involved could not be able to communicate to one another because of the difference in languages. So these are the disadvantages of barter trade. Now we are going to move to currency trade. And what is currency trade? What are some of the advantages of using currency trade? What are some of the characteristics of currency trade? And what are some of the disadvantages of currency trade? So let's begin by defining what currency trade is. Currency is the use of money to purchase commodities or pay for services, and currency is a medium of exchange accepted by a community as a measure of value for goods and services. And we have 2 forms of currency. We have notes and we have coins. Examples of notes, for example, in Kenya we have a 50 shilling note, we have a 100 shilling note, we have a 200 shilling note, we have a 500 shilling note, and a 1,000 shilling note. So those are the forms of notes. And then for the coins, we have different values of coins. We have a 1 shilling coin, 5 shilling coin, 10 shilling coin, 10 shilling coin, and at some point we had a 40 shilling coin for those who are able to see that. So there are also different values of the coin. So that is all about currency. And different countries have different currencies. Okay, and so we are going to look at some of the characteristics of this currency trade, and one of them is that it should be accepted by society. The form of currency that has been chosen should be accepted by the society. And next is that it should be stable and retain value without depreciating. This currency should be stable and retain its value. And then the currency should be divisible into smaller units. That is why in Kenya we have a 1 shilling coin, we have a 500 shilling note, and the different units in the currency. So it should be divisible into smaller units. The next characteristic is it should be portable to allow easy transportation. So it should be portable. One should be able to move with it freely from one place to another. It should be portable. The next characteristic is that it should be convertible into other currencies. Kenya should be able to convert its currency with the US dollar. It should be able to convert its currency with the Ugandan shilling or the Ugandan currency. So these currencies should be convertible to other currencies. And lastly, it should be durable and the quality to be kept for a longer time. So this currency should be durable. So the next subtopic under currency trade, we are going to look at the advantages of using currency. And one of these is that it is a measure of value. Currency trade is a measure of value. We are able to measure the value of a commodity or the value of the currency. The next advantage, it is possible to store wealth. Since money is a store of wealth, we can be able to store wealth, unlike barter trade where it was impossible to store the wealth because some wealth could go perishable, some wealth were perishable and they could go into waste. And the next advantage is that it is portable. Since it's not bulky, one can be able to move with it freely from one place to another without burden. And lastly, it can be divided into smaller units. The money or the currency can be divided into smaller units. We can divide it into 100 shilling for the Kenyan currency. We can divide it into 5 shillings. So it is divisible into smaller units. Lastly, we are going to look at the disadvantages of currency. And under these, we can see that the value of the currency may fluctuate depending on the strength of a country's economy. It may fluctuate. So this is the disadvantage of using currency. It may fluctuate depending on the strength of a country's economy. We have come to the end of the lesson. And in case you have a question, in case you have an additional point from what we have, you can add it to the comment section and I'll be glad to respond to your questions and also respond to your comments. Thank you so much for your time and I hope you found these helpful. You can subscribe for more information or for more videos.